we switched places today. He went to the 15th century BC, I came forward. You know how he likes history, he'll be happy back there, but I think he'll have a little culture shock. And you can hear by the sheep and all, we had quite a week this week of sacrifices, so it's been a busy week at the tent of meeting. Okay, a little bit about myself. My name is Aaron. I am the brother of Moses. I am the first high priest of Israel and a prophet. My parents were Jochebed and Amram, and I married a girl named Elizabeth. Okay, and the thing about that is, that name now translates to Elizabeth. So when you hear that name, it is Elizabeth. And we had 4 children. We had Nadab, Abihu, Eliezer, and Ithamar were our children. And before I start the story, I just want you to know that through the thread of this whole story is, it goes back to the Garden of Eden. God met with Adam and Eve in the cool of the day, and met with them face to face. It was a very wonderful thing, and he enjoyed this. This was the joy of his life was to meet with his creation. But we know that sin put a rift in that, and had that taken away from us. But his joy has always been to be with his people, and this is what my sermon is about, with getting back to God in Aaron's time and in the tabernacle, which is meeting with him on a daily basis. I have to check my scrolls. When you're a little over 100, your mind gets kind of fuzzy. Okay. So my story starts out with first with Moses on Mount Sinai. He's meeting with God, and it's a burning bush, and he's getting instructed by God as to what to do to get his people free, so he can abide with them. And he's getting all these instructions. God's telling him miracles and so what to do to tell the Egyptians to let his people go. So he balks. He says, I'm not that eloquent in speech. I really don't want to do it. He's kind of angered God. So he says, okay, you will be the leader. However, your brother Aaron will be the high priest. He will be your mouthpiece, and he will do the talking. So, and he said, you better get down the mountain because Aaron is on his way from Egypt to meet you right now. And we did meet, and it was quite a meeting over like 40 years. Moses was gone, because he had killed an Egyptian, and it got too hot for him to stay in Egypt, so he had to leave. But God assured him that the people that would accuse him were all dead or gone or both. So we traveled back to Egypt from Midian, and we met with the elders of the Israel there in Goshen, and we told them about what had happened on Mount Sinai, what God had told us to do, and we showed them the signs with the staff and the snake. Another thing, they believed this. So we had an audience with the Pharaoh, and it didn't go very well. We were there, and Pharaoh said, "What do you want?" And we said, "God has commanded. The Lord God says, let my people go, that they may celebrate a feast to me in the wilderness." And of course, Pharaoh was a proud man. A lot of hubris there. He was pretty full of himself. Everybody told him he was a god, and he told people he was a god. He had pretty full of himself. So he said, "Who is this Lord God that I should obey him to let people go? I don't know this Lord, nor will I let Israel go." And they pushed us out of his palace. The next day, but before that, he said, "Okay, you must have a lot of time in your hands, so I'm going to make it tough for you and the Israelites. From now on, you're going to have the same quota of bricks but I won't supply the straw. You'll have to go out and glean it from the fields and make it yourself. So it was really bad when we went back to the elders, and they were kind of put out with us, but God assured us that He had a plan. So next time we went to Pharaoh, he said, "What do you want?" I said, "God says, let my people go." And I took my staff and I threw it down on the floor, and immediately it turned into a snake. And everybody withdrew. You know, a snake in a bunch of people in his palace there was kind of deadly. So he called forth his sorcerers, his magicians, and they threw their staffs down. And lo and behold, they became snakes as well. So Pharaoh thought this is some kind of parlor trick, you know, and so forth. Till God's snake ate theirs up. Let's see, Aaron, we need to show, let's see. I gotta follow these. Have you got number 1 up there yet? Okay, that was Moses on Sinai. I gotta remember to put these in here. Then picture 2. Is there one before that? There, that one there. Okay, there's a picture of my staff as a snake, and it's eating up Pharaoh's snakes. So they withdrew, and he said, "That's just a trick. I will not let your people go." So we had to leave once again. So God, the next day said, "Get up early in the morning and meet Pharaoh out by the Nile." He goes out by the Nile every morning because they worshiped the Nile. It was a river. It was life. It was water of life. It was the Nile. So we got up early and we met with Pharaoh there, and we said, and God instructed Moses to tell me for me to say, "Let my people go, that we may have a feast with them in the wilderness and celebrate our union together." But he was not impressed. So God told Moses to tell me to reach out my staff, and I struck the water, the Nile, and immediately started turning to blood. And the blood spread throughout the Nile. Everything was blood. Fish died and came up to the surface. And not only that, but the water that went out from the Nile to feed the crops, the crops started to die as well. And it wasn't just that, it was the reservoirs, the streams, every body of water, even the water in the ceramic and wood jugs turned to blood. The people there was nothing to drink. But the magicians came up with some water, and they changed the water into blood. Now, having said that, Satan does not have the capability to create, but he can have them create a strong illusion, as that was the fact that there was actually blood in their water, and the snake, and so forth. So they could do that, but they could not make water back to water again, blood. They could not do that. And it was a whole week before Pharaoh contacted us. We had to meet with him again. And he did not relent. He said, God hardened his heart, so he would not relent. So we went back again in the morning and met him by the Nile. And I said, let my people go. And he said, I will not. So God told Moses to tell me to hold my staff out over the Nile. And I did. And immediately, frogs came forth. Okay, the next one. Here. Yep, there's frogs. And they were everywhere. They went into the palace. They went into their houses. They went into their bedrooms, their beds. They were in kneading troughs. They were in the dough. They were in the food. They were everywhere, and people suffered. And finally, Pharaoh says, "Okay, I will let your people go if you get rid of these." So Moses and I went out. Moses held up his hand and prayed that the frogs would be gone, and they all died except the ones that were in the Nile that were there to begin with. But they died and they stank and they smelled and they were all over and they piled them up and tried to get rid of them, but they couldn't. It smelled up all of Egypt. And he said, and after the crisis was gone, Pharaoh said, well, you know, that's okay, that won't happen again. That was just kind of a happening, an anomaly, you know, kind of like our weather getting bad now. People say, well, you know, that's just one of the things, global warming. But we know it's God talking to us. So he said, I will not let your people go. So, Moses, the next day, came, and would you want the next slide, Eric? And God told Moses to tell me to strike the ground with my staff, and I did. And every particle of dirt, every particle of dust became lice, and they were over the whole land, and they were over the people, they were over the animals, and everything suffered for days. And finally, Pharaoh says, okay, I relent, I was wrong, you know, make the plague go away. And so Moses prayed, and it did go away. But he says, I will not let your people go. So the next plague came about. And the next one was flies. And they came out everywhere. And fighting flies, they were everywhere. They were on the cattle, they were on the people, they were in the palace, they were in the houses. There was no rest from them day or night. And they kept on and on. And finally, the people pleaded, you know, with Pharaoh, you know, let's do something, just let these people go or whatever. They had enough of this. But Pharaoh said, okay, I was wrong, okay, so make the plague of flies go away, and I will let your people go. But I want you can just sacrifice within the city. I don't want you going too far or just out of the perimeter. So that wasn't, God didn't want that. That's what Pharaoh wanted. So his next plague came along, which was, Eric, the next one? Okay, the next one yet? That's the flies again. And more flies, and another one. Then all the livestock died. All the camels, all the horses, all the goats, sheep, cows, everything livestock died. And they were dead and smelling. And this was a hardship because the Nile, being blood, had killed some of the produce that had watered, and they were suffering from that. And now the livestock, they used that for food and for clothing and also for their work, the oxen and so forth, and for the transportation. So again, Pharaoh did not relent. He said, I will let them go, just, you know, but he did not. He did not let the people go again. So the next plague came, Eric, and that was boils. And boils broke out in people all over the land. There was boils, hurting boils. They couldn't sleep. They couldn't do anything. Even Pharaoh's magicians were so covered with boils, they were too sick to appear to even put a fight against Aaron and Moses and me. So Pharaoh said, well, okay, well, I was bad, you know, you can go, but you have to, you can only take the men to go out of the camp. Well, that wasn't God's plan. But I forgot to tell you that the magicians did create the frogs. After that, they created some frogs as well. But that was the last time they could do anything, because even with these boils, even if they were not led by God, they couldn't do any more miracles. So after that plague was hail, and they went to Moses and I went to Pharaoh and told him, if you do not let the people go, it's going to hail. And the crop was there, the oats and the barley, the wheat and the spelt, which is a type of wheat that animals eat, had not come up yet. But he said, I will not let your people go. So So Moses held up his staff as God commanded, and a hail, big hail, and fire with it, and it killed animals and so forth. The animals Moses warned before this that whoever would keep their animals inside, whether it be Israel or Egypt, they would be okay. So some people believed him, some didn't. So most of them didn't, and the animals were killed. All the animals that were inside were okay, and the crops were just decimated. The only hope they had left was the wheat coming up yet, which was yet to come. And the next one, Eric. Okay, grasshoppers. So they went to Pharaoh and said, God said, let my people go, and then I may celebrate a feast with them in the wilderness. And he says, I will not let your people go. He said, so I told him that the next plague is going to be locust. And Aaron held up his staff. Moses held up his staff this time, and it was a strong east wind that came from the Red Sea, and it blew hard, and it blew long, and it blew up locusts from there that was thick in the sky and black in the sky, and they set upon the crops that were left from the hail, which wasn't much. They ate the trees, they ate everything in sight, and the people cried out. They had no food, they had no water. The only way they had water was to dig along the Nile and let the blood water flow through the earth and up to it, and they could have a little bit of drinking water, which wasn't quite enough. So they were suffering in so many ways, and now the locust came eating up the rest of what they had. And he still turned away, and he didn't let his people go. So then the next one was darkness. And as soon as Moses walked away, everything became black. I mean, it wasn't just dark. It wasn't like during the eclipse or anything else. It was black. Have you ever been in a cave or a room where there's absolutely no light? You can put your hand in front of your face and you can't see it. The darkness is almost felt. It's almost palpable. That was the darkness. And it went on and on. However, Goshen had light. The Israelites had light. They had nothing to fear from this because they weren't a part of this plague. And Moses finally had enough, and his officials said, we have to just relent. Egypt is ruined. There's nothing left to it. And so Pharaoh said, well, I don't think so. We're not going to go yet. He still did not relent. He was a very stubborn, stiff-necked man. Said that God hardened his heart, but he hardened his own heart. And the people, he was the only one the people wanted the Egyptians to go as well. So the last one and the worst one was the plague of the firstborn dying. And it wasn't just of the people, it was the animals and so forth, the firstborn, all the way from Pharaoh on down to his officers, to his staff, to the people in his court, to the people, the farmers, the artisans, the people at the time, firstborn were all going to die. The avenging angel was to come through, the destroying angel that night. So God instructed us to tell the people, get ready, because we're going to leave. And Pharaoh's going to tell us to go, and this time we're going. So he told us to have bread ready, unleavened bread that we were to make. No leavening in the bread at all. And this is to symbolize how quickly they had to leave Egypt. And they were to kill a lamb. And if the neighbor was poor enough, didn't have one, they were to share that lamb with them as well. But they were to eat it all up, and not to boil it or whatever, but to roast it with bitter herbs. And they were to eat it all up before morning. Well, about midnight, they heard the cry. However, God instructed Israelites and Egyptians to put blood from their sacrifice on their door, on the lintels over the door and on the doorpost. And so they would use a branch, like a hyssop branch or something, and put it on there. And whether it was Egyptian or whether it was Israelite, they were to do it. And the destroying angel passed over. And what does that remind you of? What's going on right now in the Jewish community? Passover, right? Yeah. Pesach is Passover. And this is a special one. It's Shabbat Pesach. So this is the Sabbath of the Passover. It's been going since Tuesday, and I think it goes through Monday. So God said to commemorate this and to celebrate this every year from that point on. And the Jewish people still do that. And it also said to have your loins girded, which is your belt on, and the things you need strapped on, your sandals on your feet, your staff in your hand, your oxen ready, and so forth, because they were going to leave, and they were going to leave fast. So all we heard was cries and suffering. It was awful. The people cried, the women cried for their dead babies. Animals, cattle, mourning for their dead calves. It was bad, very bad. But we had to stay inside. We couldn't help anyone, or we would be killed as well. So that morning, everything was loaded up, and we took off. Moses leading us. We left Goshen. We left heading out of Egypt. But God guided us. He guided us away from the Philistine area because He did not want us to fight and have a war right away, because He thought the people might relent and go back to Egypt. So we went another way around, heading out. And a pillar of cloud was before us, and Moses followed that, and we followed Moses. Wherever it went, we followed it. That night, it was a pillar of fire. It was God. And he led us along and brought us up to the Red Sea. Now, I don't know, nobody thought right away, how are we going to get around this and so forth? There are mountains on each side and so forth. But God led us right there. And about this time, back in Pharaoh's palace, he kind of came to his senses, and after his grieving, he says, I'm going to get them. I'm going to get them. So he told, and his officials said, just leave them go, just let them go. And he would not. So he had his army assembled 600 chariots to go after Israel, and they headed out. And of course, when they came up on them, they were in a cul-de-sac. There was no place for them to go. And about that time, Pharaoh was going to come down on them with his chariots, and the pillar went from between the people and the Red Sea over them, between Pharaoh and the people. And he could not move forward. And the people complained, and they were afraid. They said, you brought us out here to die, Moses. You know, we could have just died in Egypt. At least back then we would have had food and water. We have nothing. And Moses held up his staff, and he said, watch what the Lord can do. And he held up his staff, and the people watched. And the Red Sea started to part. The wind blew really, really hard and opened up the sea. And it made a path through it all the way to the other side. It looked like a reverse waterfall on each side going up. And rocks were gone, and the path was dry. It was a miracle. And Moses said to me, let's get the people through. Let's get them through now. This is our chance. So Isn't it just like God to have you in a hopeless situation, just to bail you out and show you, how good He is and how wonderful God is. Well, it took 600,000 people, that's how many there were, to get through there in a while. So the pillar kept Pharaoh busy for quite a while. And they got to the other side, and the pillar disappeared. So Pharaoh said, let's go get him. And down they went into the dry bed. Everybody was apprehensive, I would imagine, from the Egyptian soldiers. Can you imagine, going on the bottom of a sea and having the walls go up on either side? It's nothing that's ever been done before. It was incredible. But the Egyptians thought they could get through. And Pharaoh, with his hubris and his pride, thought he could do it. He could do anything because he was a god. He told the people he was a god. People told him that he was a god. So he could do anything. However, when they got about to the middle, the people cried and said, they're coming after us. Now we're going to die. And all of a sudden, the chariot wheels started to wobble, and they couldn't go forward very well. And some of the wheels came off, and they couldn't maneuver. And they tried to turn around and go back. And that time, Moses held up his staff, and the seas returned where they were, and they were drowned. A miracle. And God brought this incident up all through the Bible, all through and into the New Testament, that He set His people free. He took them out of Egypt. He parted the sea to get them. It was reiterated over and over again so that they would remember. Okay, so they got to the other side, and okay, go to the next one. I forgot to move these. Okay, and the people complained, we've got nothing to eat. We have nothing to eat at all. And you brought us out here to die. We had the flesh pots in Egypt that we could eat. We had bread we'd eat till we were filled. They had to remember they were slaves, but that little factor didn't enter in because they were afraid, and they were complaining and grumbling to Moses that they had nothing to eat. So the next morning, a miracle happened. When they got up, along with the dew, it was just white, like a white frost. It was like over the ground and over the plants and everything. The people came up and said, what is it? They didn't know. Nobody had ever seen this before. And it was manna. It was food from heaven to feed the people. And it came every morning. And Moses and I instructed them that it would be there every morning, and you gathered about an omer, which is, I guess, about three liters a day that you could eat each person. If a person in your house needed that as well, you could gather that much. But don't gather any more. And eat up what you take, because if you don't, it will spoil. And maggots will be in it. And sure enough, some people had to try it. They had not to believe what Moses said. So that next morning they had kept some over, and it was spoiled, and the maggots were in it. And Moses was really upset. And they cried to him. We had the flesh pots in Egypt. We had food, we had meat. And God was getting angry about this time. He was getting kind of fed up with the people. So he said, okay, in the morning you'll have the manna, and in the evening you'll have quail. And every evening the birds came, and they could take them and process them and eat them. They had that. And they had some water that was with them. Next they ran out of water. And they complained. And they complained and they complained. So they moved on, and they finally got to Mara, which is a spring. And, okay, go to the next slide. Okay, again. Okay, hold it there. They went to Mara, but they tried the water, and it was not fit to eat. It was sour. It was bad, bitter. And so God instructed Moses to take the branch off the tree and throw it into the water. Exactly as a kid, the water became sweet, and everybody drank and had water. Now these people, they had miracle after miracle after miracle, and they had to be proven each time. You know, if somebody parted the Red Sea for you, and God did, He could sure have food for you and have water for you. But each time they ran out, they complained, and they were very adamant about it, and almost to the point of being militant against Moses and to me. We were very jubilant, and once we crossed, everybody was happy, and they sang. Miriam, our sister, sang and danced and played the tambourine, and everybody was happy. Now, they had water, they had food, they had what they needed, and so they were happy. They were out of Egypt and finally moving along. So we were moving along. We were heading back towards Sinai, where the cloud, the pillar of cloud was leading us. And we could see, you know, people on the horizons. There were like chariots and armies and so forth. And here was the Amalekites. And we thought, well, we could go through and they may, you know, not do anything to us. But God said they're going to attack you. And so we got ready. And Moses and I and a man named Hur went up on the hillside to watch the battle. And wow, what a battle it was. I mean, the Israelites weren't used to fighting. They weren't fighting people. They were slaves, you know. But Moses held up his hands, and the battle was going their way. They were winning the battle, pushing the enemy back. But Moses got tired, and his hands would go down, and then it would go the other way. They would come up on the Israelites, and we would be losing. So we set Moses down on a rock, and Hur held one arm up, and I held the other arm up till evening, until the battle was on, and we were saved. And another miracle from God. Incredible. We saved one more time. So we moved on, and we went to another spring. It was called Spring of Elim. And it had 12 springs and 70 date palms there. So it was an oasis, and it was really nice. And people ate, and they kind of got their courage back and their well-being back and their faith in God back, because everything was going to Him. But then we had to move on to Sinai. And see, the Ten Commandments there were Moses and I and Joshua. That was in the battle with the Amalekites, and Joshua, I forgot to mention that, was leading that battle. And he was instrumental as we go through that. So we got to Sinai, and we went up the mountain, and God was to meet us there. But He said, I'm going to talk to the people. I'm going to let them know that I'm God and what I require of them. So He said, make sure there's barriers around the mountain that the people can't get too close. If they do, they're going to die. And so we put up the barriers, and people watched. And I don't really think they needed the barriers, because it was an earthquake and lightning and thunder, and every tribe would blow their shofars. You know what that is? This is a shofar. It's a horn that they blew for signaling and for battle cries and battle signals and so forth. And they were blowing these, and it must have been quite a thing. And these were this was kudu that they had, like an antelope, and they also had ram's horn that they used. And it must have been quite a sound and quite a sight for that, because the people trembled. They were afraid. They didn't really need the barriers. They wanted to draw back, but there was some curious that, I want to see what this is, and they moved forward, but the barriers were there. And finally, I came down the mountain and went to the people, but Moses stayed there. And Moses was given the Ten Commandments, as you saw up there. And it wasn't just that, but it was the ordinances, the laws, the Mosaic laws were given as well. They were the laws of how to deal with your neighbor, how to deal with problems, how to deal with property, and all of that sort of thing. Because God was looking ahead at ruling themselves when they got to the land of promise. So he was up there for 40 days, and it was a long time, and the people got restless. You know, this was a real stiff-necked people as well. And so they murmured. They said, well, I bet he's dead up there. I bet he's not coming back down. He died up there. Maybe God killed him. Or they had all kinds of reasons. And you know how that talk gets going, and then somebody gets somebody else going, and pretty soon all the tribes were like, well, we don't know. We don't know what to do now. We want our own God. And to my shame and to my regret, I relented. And I gathered up the earrings, I gathered up the necklaces, the bracelets of gold that were plundered from Egypt. And there was a lot. The people there were affected by God to give us the stuff, and they were happy for us to leave. And they gave us lots of gold, acacia wood, everything we needed to build in our new place. And the people wanted their own God, so they fashioned a calf, and I had to melt down the gold and the liquid and made a golden calf and an altar to sacrifice by. Imagine that, a priest of God, as I was or am, that I relented to the people. I was afraid of them, and I was afraid of the future. I mistrusted God, and I had a weak moment. I was called to God to be a priest and a prophet, but I relented. I sinned. I had a problem. And we can all relate to that. But this was very grievous, and it led to deaths on account of it. And the people were raucous, and they were lascivious. They did anything they wanted. They were to each other and so forth. There was a free for all, and they were worshiping this calf. About this time, Moses was being talked to by God, and God gave him all these rules. He gave him the 10 Commandments on the 2 tablets. Said, you better get down there. That these people are really, really bad. They're doing some bad things. He got down there and got looking over the camp and saw all the action and the ruckus and the golden calf. He was so angry, he took the 10 Commandments and smashed them from the rocks, and down they went. And he went down there and asked me why. And of course, you know, when you do something wrong, you try to cover it up, right? Okay, I said, well, I was afraid of the people, which I was, and I yielded to public opinion. We've all done that. And I said, it was the strangest thing. I gathered up the rings, the bracelets, the necklaces, the gold, and I threw them in the fire, and out popped this golden calf. Well, you see, the people seen a lot of miracles, and I thought, well, I could get away with it, you know. But God knew, and I knew, and Moses knew. So what was to be done? It wasn't the Levites. The Levites had nothing to do with this. They were innocent. So he had the Levites go to the right, and all the people that were for this calf to the left. And it wasn't everybody. It was a group. So he said, okay, this is what we're going to do. And the Levites drew their swords and they slew 300 of them, right then and there. Now it seems rather harsh. However, this was God's budding church here. His tabernacle was to be built. It was this fresh idea. He could not have anything go wrong here. Just as in the first church after Jesus, that Peter and Paul, and remember Ananias and Sapphira came up, and they welched on deal for giving the money, they were struck dead. I mean, if we would do that now, we wouldn't be struck dead. But during that time, the new church was just getting started, and the things had to be exact. They had to be right. And so they were, and there was a lot of them that died right then and there. Okay, what's next? Oh, yeah, and then we come to building the tabernacle. And God had given, 40 days up there, God gave Moses all kinds of instructions about the tabernacle, how to build it. It was detailed, and it was precise and accurate. Have you ever known God not to be precise and accurate? If He wasn't, the planets would be flying out of orbit. Even the atoms would be in disarray and gone. He's a God of order. He's a God of precision. And He gave Moses precise details on how to build the tabernacle. And remember when I first opened the sermon, I said that God wanted to be with His people, right? From Eden on. Well, this was the whole plan. He was to be with the people, to meet with them. Not just to meet with them to commune, but to forgive them of their sins. This was the foreshadowing of Christ all through the Old Testament, and especially the tabernacle. It foreshadowed Christ. And it also foreshadowed the tabernacle that is in heaven right now. And what's Jesus doing in the tabernacle right now? Yeah, He's a high priest. And He's doing the same things as I do in the earthly one. Of course, the earthly one is another shadow of the real one out there. But it's the same thing. Our prayers go up as incense, and they go over the veil into the most holy place for God. And He intercedes. So, we set about making the tabernacle. And it was portable. Can you imagine now our church, if we decided to go to another state or something, was, just take the church down and take it with us? Well, that's what they did. I mean, it was quite a deal undertaking. And this is what the Levites did. They started the church and the processes of the tabernacle and so forth. So it was quite an ordeal. I have a model up here you can look at afterwards as well. The first one is the tent of meeting, which is a tent all the way around. And as you enter, there's only one way to enter, and there's two big golden pillars there. And people would bring their offerings there to bring them up. And Aaron and my sons, they were also ordained as priests with their hands on them, and then they would be slain, and they would be sacrificed to God. So He gave precise plans for this. The first one is, as you walk in, would be the altar of sacrifice. And that's it right there. And there were tables all around where the animals were slain, and they were butchered, and I won't go into all the details, it would take a long time, but they were sacrificed on this, and the blood from them was rubbed on those horns that you see on the four corners. And that was made of acacia wood and covered with gold. And it was portable, of course, everything was. It had rings in it that they could slide those poles through, and it could be moved. And as you move forward, go to the next one, Eric. Okay, there it is again. And go to the next one. Was the laver. That was between the sanctuary and the altar of sacrifice. And this was made of bronze. And it's a fun fact. It was made of bronze from looking glasses that the women had brought along from Egypt that were brass. They turned them in, and they were melted down, and they were used to make the laver. And the laver was, of course, bronze container that held the water that we had to cleanse ourselves each time before we went into the sanctuary, our hands and our feet. And inside, then we go inside, and on the left as you walk in was they call it the menorah, it's the lampstand. It's like that one there on the piano, only it was about 120 some pounds, and it was about 5 foot 3 inches tall. It was made out of a single gold nugget, or whatever it was. It was made from that. It was solid gold. And I've seen some pictures of, well, it wasn't pictures, but pictures of Romans when they sacked Jerusalem, that Romans soldiers are carrying this away, and there's a bunch of them holding it, walking away with it, so it was taken away from me then. And the lampstand, of course, is what is light in the Bible? What does it resemble? The Holy Spirit, right? Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. And these, it was fashioned so that these would look like almond branches and almond leaves on it. And on the end of each one was a cup. And the menorahs they use now for, they put candles in. But these had cups on the end and burned olive oil. And they kept them burning all the time, constantly. So this represented the Holy Spirit. We're the light of the world, right? God's people are the light of the world. And everything to do with light, this lampstand signified. Okay, on to the next. And this is how they built it. They had mold there, and they poured it in, and so forth, out of one nugget, one big thing of gold they dumped in there. Okay, go to the next one. Oh, and as you walk in on the right, there's a table called the table of showbread. And there were 6 loaves and 2 stacks. And each loaf was about 5 pounds, 5 to 6 pounds. So they were pretty big and heavy. And this symbol, God's word, and that is there. God says that you should even eat His word. And the prophets have said that, and this is what they mean. This is what this symbolizes. It's God's word. And this, of course, is acacia wood as well, and portable with the rings on it. And there was fresh bread put there, bread without leaven, or without leavening, each day. And then on the Sabbath, it was eaten by the priest, and fresh bread was put there as well. And this was taken care of in the temple by the Levites as well, constantly. Okay, go to the next one. And there, and in front with you have the table, the showbread table on the right, and you have the lampstand on the left. In front of that, there's a veil, and in front of the veil is the altar of incense. And that's kept going all the time, and it's always ready. And this symbolizes, of course, the prayers of the people. And this incense goes up and over the curtain into the most holy place. And it's a sweet smell to the Lord. This is what He instructed. And the incense they used there was onycha, stacta, galbanum, and frankincense. That was the main ingredients in that. And no one else could use those ingredients together because they used these separately for like perfumes and so forth. But they could not use this combination together in the camp. If you did, you were put out of the camp. So God wanted this to Himself, and He wanted it precise and to keep this fire going. And the prayers going, it symbolized the smoke going forever was our prayers non-stopping to the Lord. And also that God is there to receive always. He's always there to receive the prayers. This, of course, was acacia wood with gold over it, with rings and handles. Okay, go to the next one there. And there's a picture of the most holy place. So if you would go through the veil, remember that big veil that, there was a bigger one then in the temple that was ripped from top to bottom when Jesus died. This veil, if you go in there, there's this Ark of the Covenant. I have a model of it here. And it was gold. And the acacia wood and gold, and the top was completely gold. The mercy seat was on top, if you can see it, with two angels bowing and bending over it. What do they keep inside? Anybody know?
The staff.
The staff? My staff, right? Aaron's staff?
Aaron's staff.
Okay.
And the Ten Commandments.
Yeah. It budded. Now I will get to that as well. And the Ten Commandments and manna. The miracles from God. God's law, God's food, God's provisions, and so forth are kept in there. The Mosaic laws that Moses brought down and for the people were kept on the outside. And of course the Sabbath was on the Ten Commandments on the inside, so that was not done away with. It was kept and was never intended to be done away with. Okay, next one, Eric. I forgot. Oh, there we go. We got pictures of it. Okay, next one. Okay, here's the priest in the most holy place, and he had to prepare. We had to prepare ahead of time spiritually. We had to wash. There was a way to wash to keep our bodies washed, and then to wash our hands and our feet in the laver before we went in. If that wasn't done, we wouldn't live to tell about it. Now, it was God was being precise. He said, "This is the way I want it. This is the way I need it." And it kind of reminds us of people now, even myself or whatever. If you have you're keeping God's law, but you have this little pet sin, you know, and it's like, well, God will overlook that, you know, and it'll be all right. You know, I'm pretty good friends with God. He'll overlook that. Well, no, he doesn't. No more than he overlooks this. If you don't do what is said, and you enter the holy and the most holy place, you're going to die. And you will eventually die from the sin you didn't get rid of. Okay, next. Okay, now it comes to my garments. As you see, I look a little different than everybody else today. I put on my vest for Sabbath. Okay, where do I begin? Oh, let's begin at the top. This is the turban that God had precise, how would you say, measurements and so forth is what it's to look like. And you see across the front is a gold plate, and it has Paleo Hebrew, which was, you know, the first Hebrew before they had now. Anyway, and you read it from right to left. It says, "Holiness unto the Lord." And why do you suppose it's on the forehead? Where do our thought processes come from? Right here, yeah. And particularly that part of the brain. Our front part of the brain is thought processing. Where else do we hear in the Bible about something on the forehead? Cain? How about Cain? He was marked so he wouldn't be killed after killing people. Revelation. The mark of the beast will be on the forehead or in the hand. How about God's people? It'll be on the forehead, right? Just as this is on the hand. So the forehead means a lot to God. This is the thought processes. This is the battle of the universe. This is the battle that's raging, and we can't see what is going on. We can see results, but it's going on just the same. Okay, looks like me. And, if you noticed, I was barefoot. And, when Moses went up to talk to God in the burning bush, what did God tell him to do? Take off your sandals from off thy feet, because it's holy ground. So, how about Joshua when he talked to the angel, which was Jesus? Take off your shoes from off your feet. This is holy ground that I'm on. So when we go into the holy place, the most holy place, we are barefoot. We do not have our sandals on for the same reason. Okay, what's the next one? Oh, back again, go back. Ah, there we go. Okay, first I'll go with the clothing I have, the garments. The undergarment here, this white, is called a tunic, and it's made out of one continuous piece. There were no seams in it, and so forth. And it's white. What does white signify? Purity, right? Yeah. Who in the New Testament, a salient character there, wore a white tunic? Jesus did. Because he was our priest, our high priest. He wore one as well. Okay, and that was what God said to be the undergarment, which was purity. The next one is the robe. And you notice, has the jingles on it. It was told to God to put a bell and a pomegranate around the circumference. That's what he wanted. And the blue is to signify God's law and obedience. And the next garment was the ephod, which is this part here. It goes over my head, and there's a belt that holds it together. Which my wife did very well. Elisheba, I should say, did it. Okay, and she did a good job. And so this was to be purple, red, and blue, and the design on it to have all those colors signified by God. Okay, I guess the first thing we see would be this plate. It's called the breastplate, and it has a different gem in each 3 rows, and then 4 rows down. And you start from the right across. It's got all the tribes of Israel, and they're written on them. Each tribe in Paleo-Hebrew is written on them per God's request. And there's a reason for this, because how does God look at us? And, I mean, he just didn't say, well, put a piece of granite here and a rock you find here or whatever. What are these? They're precious, aren't they? They're hard to find gems. They're anything from turquoise to amethyst to lapis lazuli, ruby. It's every kind. They're precious. That's because we are precious to him. And these are the tribes that our name of the tribes. Each one has a different one that I wear close to my heart, which I resemble Jesus, right? The high priest. I'm the high priest. I resemble Jesus in the work that I do, that he's doing up there. And these are very precious to him, and he loves his people. And this goes around with me. And he gave details, of course, to have a blue cord around it and chains holding it up. And chains to the shoulder gems, which are sardonyx. And on each rock, or each gem, 6 of the tribes is on one, and 6 is on the other. Now, why do you suppose he had them here? Why do you put them on the shoulders? It's because, and I'm resembling, or I'm doing Jesus' work. I am being Jesus when I do this. He took the weight of the sins, and they're on his shoulders, of the camp, and of the whole world. And that's to designate the weight of the sin that was there in the camp. And these were all made for me and for my sons. And we got the tabernacle built, and my sons and I were ordained, and they poured water on us, and they also put blood on my ear, on my right finger, finger and on my right toe. Why do you suppose that is? You hear with your ear, right? You do things with your fingers, and you walk to where you need to go with your feet. And they put olive oil on our heads as well to ordain us and so forth. So we were then priests of God, and I was high priest. And we got things ready for about a week, and we came to dedicating the tabernacle, and all of Israel came, and they wanted to see him and what was going on and so forth. And I had two sons there that were helping that day, Nadab and Abihu, that, again, much to my shame, was a big problem. They used strange fire. They used fire not from what God had provided, but from their own means to light the incense and the fires. And as they got closer to the most holy place and the holy place, the fire came out and consumed them on the spot. They were dead. How would you feel if your two sons, your oldest son, that quick, gone? However, Moses said, do not even grieve. Do not even say a word. And do not say anything. Because they knew better. I should have taught them better. And they were kind of rebellious, and they drank strong drink, and they did what they weren't supposed to do, and they didn't take their duties seriously, and they died for it. Again, God is precise. He is a God of precision. So it wasn't until later that I could warn my sons. I didn't dare mourn them in front of Israel, because it would be like mourning what they'd done wrong, and I could not do that until later. So we had this open and for business, and we took this along, and the people brought their lambs and so forth, and I would have to sacrifice as well, like a bullock and so forth, and it went like a whole year, and the sins built up. So it's called the Day of Atonement, the cleanses the sanctuary. And for myself, I had to offer a bullock for my own household, and then there were two young goats brought up, and they were one was chosen. You cast lots, and the other thing. Oh, I got to get to that yet. Part of my thing here. I'll get to that. They cast lots as to which one would be God's and which would be Azazel, which one would die. And so one was chosen to be God, and that one was sacrificed. So that was Jesus. That was the sacrifice, the Lamb of God, and was sacrificed. The other one, I put my hands on its head, and the whole sins of the camp were put on that young goat, and he was taken out into the wilderness to die. And that was symbolic of death and sin gone, eradicated. So this came with us, as I said. We had to deconstruct it and reconstruct it as we would go along. And there was another snag along the way as well. We had a man named Kadesh, and he was a Levite, and he got people all stirred up and said, we're Levites. Why can't we be like Moses and Aaron? They're Levites, we are too. We should have just as much right and glory as they do. And did God say that was right? No, he chose Moses and he chose me. And the other ones were to do their duties, but they wanted to have our jobs. What does that remind you of? What happened in heaven a long time ago? Satan wanted Jesus' job. And there was a battle. It wasn't good. It didn't go well. And we're still feeling the effects. Well, it didn't go well for these men that Kadesh, or Korah stirred up. And Moses said, when you get up in the morning, you come to us with your censers, like this here, with your incense, and we will talk about this. So they got up and they went to the tent of meeting out front, and Moses said, okay, you people that are with Korah, go here, and the other ones are on this side, on the left side. Or on the right side were the good Levites, and the left was the Korah and his dissidents. And they did not relent. The earth opened up, fire came out from underneath and consumed them. They were gone. Again, God was precise. God is precision. He does not allow things. A hidden sin, so forth, is to be dealt with until it gets to the point where it is death, and it will be death. We also got into it. Miriam and I, again, it was me. We had a problem with Moses' wife. She was a Cushite, and I don't know. We didn't think much of her. We let him know. We let him know we weren't happy with it at all. And God says, you all three go out of the camp. And when we did, went out of the tent of meeting, all of a sudden, Miriam turned leprous, and she was over her whole body. And I pleaded with Moses, do something, So he asked God, to stop. And God says, put her out of the camp for a week, and then she would be okay. And she was. God's true to his word, of course. But Moses was not equal with God, but he was God's instrument. And if you talked against God's instrument, you were talking against God. And he didn't allow it. And we didn't see it was fair, but it was fair, and we were dealt with. Of course, happy for me, I was not any penalty for that. Let's see. Oh, I got to tell you about the casting lots. Also in the breastplate, I have what's called the Urim and Thummim. That's kind of hard to say unless you say it a few times. The Urim and Thummim. Okay, these were two stones, one black, one white, and everything, God couldn't talk through Moses for every little thing. So things were settled with these. It was like casting lots. He would ask God the question, and he would have it in a bag, which one you would draw out is what it would be. Like if somebody was brought before them that they thought was guilty of a crime, doing something wrong, well, we would have these in the bag, and the priest would draw it out. And whichever one it was black is yes, white is no, black is innocent, white is guilty, and Urim and Thummim mean light and perfection. So whichever one you would draw out, it's not like, the magic 8 ball, we could turn it, ask him again next time, or do this or that. These were drawn out, and these were designated by God. This was his answer. This was an answer from God with the Urim and Thummim. One was hematite, and one was alabaster, I believe. Okay, so what about all this? What's the use? I mean, this is all a long time ago, right? Well, what's the difference? It's all history, it's gone and so forth. But it's still going on in heaven. The tabernacle. It's still, prayers are being intercession for us. This was set up for the Israelites coming out of captivity. They'd almost lost their identity. They had just remnants of it, and they had to be shown physically and so forth how to act and how to do it, and laws and so forth. So this is the reason for this. This was called a typical. And after, with all these sacrifices for sin, when Jesus died on the cross, okay, next one there. Next one, there we go. Okay, there's the ultimate sacrifice. this was coming to this point. This was a shadow of what this was going to be. We're living in the antitypical after Jesus was crucified. But imagine having, when you sinned, to go to the camp and have to butcher the animal. It had to die for you because you sinned. And you saw it happen and so forth. And now we have the Holy Spirit in our hearts, Ruach HaKodesh, in our hearts, and we don't have to do that. It's just, it's easy, and God made it that way, and yet the majority of the people turn their back on it. It's too easy, maybe, I guess. But anyway, this all foreshadowed that right there. Jesus, the ultimate sacrifice for our sins, and died for our sins. Let's see, I think. Go ahead and read my notes much. I'm not used to using these. I'm used to using scrolls, so please bear with me. Oh, final text I have to read. Oh, wait a minute. You have to read one. Elisheba is going to read a text for us. And it's about the garments.
And you shall make holy garments for Aaron, your brother, for glory and for beauty.
Glory and for beauty. Now that had nothing to do with me, you know. I'm no glory, no beauty. I'm just a vehicle of these garments. And they were made for the people. Now, people never got to see inside of the holy place and the most holy place. It was only for the priest, right? So, I was living, walking inside of the tabernacle. The same colors, the same things. There was gold on me. There was purple, red, blue, and so forth. And so the people would see me, and they could have a glimpse of what it was like in the tabernacle. That's why the colors, and that's what that verse pertains to. And let's see, it's going to take me a second here. Let's see, Exodus 25:8. I stopped off at Ben Franklin when I told these. Let's see, Exodus 25. As I said, I'm more used to scrolls. Okay, 25:8. Have them construct a sanctuary for me, so that I may dwell among them. And this was God's wish from the Garden of Eden to dwell with his people. And he did with this sanctuary, and now he dwells in our hearts. Okay, I guess our closing song will be Abide With Me. Number 50. Please stand.